It's the Score North Twin Show.
All right, Score North Extra Innings live from Target Field. I am back. I am alive. I am well. I'm actually glad, Ross. I'm a little glad they kind of lost yesterday, because if I had come in here and then they had lost, I'm not dealing with that juju. So I'm actually kind of glad that we're opening a new series with a new winning streak that obviously starts tonight against the Seattle Mariners.
You know, Declan, I don't believe in superstitions because they're bad luck, but I do like what you just said there, because I also would have the same moral conundrum. So, look, it would have been nice for the Twins to not lose a game the rest of the year, but I think we all knew that was not going to happen.
Yeah, so they'll begin a 4-game series with the Seattle Mariners here tonight at Target Field to wrap up their homestand. They'll hit the road after that. They'll come back for a little bit. Then they'll go on another road trip. So, Twins 4-gamer against the Seattle Mariners, a really good pitching staff. And tonight you're going to get Luis Castillo if you're the Twins, which is going to be tough. Won't preview too much of this game, obviously, because we'll be that dated. But the Twins are going to have some tough time against a really good pitching staff in Seattle, which kind of begs the question for me, Ross. And I did not get confirmation. I tried to look. I tried to dig. I tried to confirm. I think we need a new sausage, right? I mean, the old sausage is in the trash. So what are we going with? Venison? Not venison, but we need some type of new charcuterie, new sausage, new piece of meat to toss. Now that winning streak is over, can you get a new piece of meat to toss for the Minnesota Twins to start a new winning streak against the Seattle Mariners?
I'm going to do my best to
You're trying hard. I could tell.
I'm going to let those euphemisms go. I'm going to tell you they landed, but I'm going to let them go. It'll be interesting to see what happens with this sausage party, so to speak. There you go. I had to get one in as well. If the Twins lose 3 out of 4, does that kill the rally sausage completely, or does it have some sort of comeback? Does it work its way back into somebody's bag? I don't know. I like this stuff. I know some people don't like it. I think it's great. The season lasts 162 games. If the guys think it's working for them and it's leading to better at-bats and they're scoring some runs, great. I'll say this about the weekend series with Boston, Declan. It would have been nice to keep that winning streak going. But you know what? Nice to get 2 out of 3 from a team that's a step up in competition from the Angels and the White Sox. And I think if you can win, maybe split or win 3 out of 4 against Seattle, I think you're going to continue to feel really good about your lot in life, as we're still very early in the season, Declan. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago when everybody was borderline panicking, myself included. But I did say, let's give this some time. It's still very early. There's going to be bad stretches, and it was nice to back up a nice win streak against lesser competition by beating a pretty good team 2 out of 3 times. I think a team in Boston, Declan, that might actually be a little bit ahead of schedule, but they have some nice pieces.
Yeah, I mean, taking 2 out of 3 against that good Red Sox team was pretty solid, especially, I think, because there was still a glass half full kind of approach, especially I know that was the case with Judd after beating up the White Sox and Angels. And, hey, I won't fight you too much. Anytime you win 12 games in baseball, I think it should be appreciated and not have an asterisk necessarily against it. But now at Seattle's here, and I think you're going to see, in my opinion, even a slightly better team, and with one that has a really good pitching staff, and Boston's pitching staff was good too. This is even a better test, because this lineup now gets to see one of the best pitchers in baseball, Luis Castillo, on Monday night. They're going to see Logan Gilbert, I believe, to close the series on Thursday. You're going to see some really good pitchers if you're the Minnesota Twins, and Rocco kind of touched on that too, that this is going to be some crazy adjustments, because obviously this team has not seen a lot of fastballs, and they've been able to adjust and hit at breaking balls. That's why they didn't win 12 games in a row again by luck. They did it because their offense came through for the most part. Yesterday was kind of looked like the old Twins, but if you take what you saw in the first 12 games, you got to even now adjust again, because Seattle's going to keep bringing it at you. So the Twins will kind of counter that with some lefties. They're going to go with 4 lefties. Edouard Julien will be the leadoff hitter back in that leadoff spot. They put him in a blender, as Rocco said, and put him at the 2 spot a few weeks ago to start that winning streak. Now he's back up in the leadoff spot. So even Rocco knew, he joked that, hey, I kind of wanted to do this earlier, but you can't really change the lineup when you're winning. So now that a loss happens, you do make that first adjustment, and we'll see if they're able to still stay on top of it and get after the Mariners pitching staff.
One of the names you mentioned there, Declan, and I think the boys will be hoping to get him back into his best form, is our boy Edouard Julien. Striking out a lot lately. I heard yesterday, I was listening to the game doing some yard work. I think he had struck out, you might have the numbers in front of you, Declan, look that up. I'm sorry. That was my best Doogie.
That's a very good Doogie, though. I am looking it up, by the way.
I think he had struck out 10 out of 18 at bats or 10 out of 19 at bats. And a guy who he will strike out a bit, but to his credit, he does work a count and typically take a good at bat, but you also don't want a guy striking out 50% of the time. This Declan could be a really challenging series for him when you factor in currently in a bit of a rut with those strikeouts and the pitching staff that he'll be up against. But I do think if the guys can keep taking good at bats, you will see good results or better results. It doesn't matter who the pitcher is. If the process is correct, it will yield good results. And I've been pretty encouraged by that the last couple weeks. We haven't had, I think there was one game where we had a ridiculous amount of strikeouts, Declan, that I can think of off the top of my head. But this team's just going to do that. As much as it annoys me, they're going to have games where they strike out a lot. I think the key, Declan, is to not have 5 to 7 of those games in a row where you're just physically not scoring runs because you're striking out all the time. And they've been better as of late, but they will be challenged by these Seattle Mariners.
Yeah, last 7 games for Julien, just 1 hit, 11 strikeouts, and 18 at-bats. So, yeah, I mean, he has certainly been fighting it. He had the 3-strikeout game in his 3 at-bats yesterday against Boston. So, yeah, you need a little bit better performance from him for sure, especially if he's now back in that leadoff spot. And look, he's in these are some crazy percentiles according to Baseball Savant, but he's in the 100th percentile in terms of chase percentage, which means he will not chase. Basically, if it's not in Julien's strike zone, whether that's the right call or the wrong call from the umpire, he is going to stick to what should be his strike zone. He's also going to draw a ton of walks. He's in the 93rd percentile in walks, but obviously, as Ross touched on there, in the 7th percentile, which is where you don't want to be, and that's in strikeout percentage. So, yes, he will still strike out a little bit. But, yeah, you can't really have too many games against this series where guys like Julien are striking out a lot, guys like Kirilloff are striking out a lot. These lefties, you really need to get on base and take advantage, because then after that, it's going to be against a bunch of righties trying to square up against a really good pitching staff in Seattle. So this top of the order has to take advantage. If any damage is going to come, it has to basically come from the top 4 guys in this batting order.
Is that a sign that Julien is fighting it, Declan, when he never swings at pitches that aren't strikes, yet he struck out 11 of his last 18 at-bats? I think that'll tell you a guy might not be seeing the ball out of the pitcher's hand very well. Declan, I can't believe we made it this far into this edition of Extra Innings. Are you ready for the return of Jorge?
Oh, I have that. I have notes. I talked to him. We all talked to him in the Mariners dugout. So, yeah, I can get to that here. Jorge Polanco back. By the way, just a little side note, I think Seattle Mariners jerseys, combination of colors, are some of the best in sports. I love teal. Teal is one of my all-time favorite colors, if not my favorite color. So I like seeing Jorge Polanco in a little bit of a new uniform here, not because I wanted him to leave the Twins, but just because he looks good in Seattle colors. But, yeah, I was able to talk to him a little bit. I asked, do you want to take anyone deep specifically? I was just curious.
Great question. Great question.
Who do you want to take? And he said everybody. He wants to hit everybody. He wants to hit everyone. Let's go everyone deep. No, he's obviously very excited to be back. And, I'm sure we'll get the video tribute, which I think this one is Judd approved. I have not confirmed that with my sports dad, but you're going to get probably a video tribute. You're going to get a nice long standing ovation, I'm sure, when he takes the batter's box for the first time tonight. But yeah, Jorge Polanco is back. He has been struggling a little bit. He still draws walks. Rocco even touched on the fact in his pregame access that, when you lose a switch hitter who is at the top of your lineup for basically the last 8 years, it becomes tough to build out a new lineup without him. And Polanco's been struggling a little bit, and the Twins hopefully will get Justin Topa back, who was part of that Polanco trade, hopefully in the coming days. He had another rehab appearance, I believe, yesterday. So either will be here by the end of the series, or maybe he's here for the road trip that will take place this weekend. But yeah, Jorge Polanco back here in Target Field to see his old friends, the Twins. It'll be a good time. I think it's always fun when you see an old face back at Target Field.
Now, if Twins fans are smart, Declan, will they applaud him so much he fails to get into the batter's box in time and starts his first at bat down 0-1? I know typically when players return and they're getting the fanfare, umpires are pretty good about not starting that clock right away, but maybe just something to monitor tonight. Let's go, Twins fans. Let him hear it so he takes strike 1 by mistake.
That's actually a good question. I know what I'm gonna do, Ross. I'm gonna dig on that, because if this new pitch clock and they want to speed up the game, like, are there instances where they all come to get, like, I'm sure either there was a meeting or the meeting at, the plate right before the game. There's probably going to be a conversation between both managers and hopefully, crew chief and umpires abide of, hey, there's going to be a little thing. He's going to have to, take his helmet off and acknowledge the crowd. Once he's back in, then we can start the bet. That is actually the interesting part. I love all the new rules in baseball. I know you are iffy on a few, but I think the new rules have mostly done a really good job with the game. But I'm going to dig on that. I'm going to go ask the source. I'm going to ask Rocco how you go about that because it is an interesting part because they're so strict on it. We've seen some players on the Twins obviously get dinged for a pitch clock or having violations in the batter's box as hitters. So I'll dig on that for you, Ross.
And I feel like as this whole thing has progressed, there's definitely been less of the violations, and I don't think it's been an enforcement thing. I just believe that players, pitchers and hitters have gotten used to all the new rules. So, yeah, I'd love for you to dig on it. I do know, Declan, I did at one point fairly recently, although maybe it could have been last year, like maybe one of Pujols' final at-bats. I think the umpire has a little bit of discretion as to when that clock starts or how quick it starts. But I'm not positive on that. So dig on that. And also be careful. I think somebody is smacking like a massive wooden mallet behind you on the desk. So just don't let them hit you. Don't let them hit you.
In the formerly mentioned Legends Club, I believe it's the Truvent. It's not sponsoring the podcast, by the way. The Thrivent. The Thrivent. I forgot what it was. But yeah, so I know when there is a violation that they do turn around and they give a sign to the official scorer or to someone in the press box that is basically, okay, now we can restart the clock. So yeah,
yes,
I do think there's probably some type of discretion of, hey, hold, we'll get this over with. And yeah, it should be a good ovation. I think it is deserved. Jorge Polanco was a pretty damn good player. I believe team MVP 2 years ago for this ball club. So yeah, Jorge Polanco back in town, and Mitch Garver back in town as well, World Series winner. He was also in the dugout holding court with a few former Twins employees and whatnot. So Garv Sauce also here in Seattle after winning a World Series ring with the Texas Rangers. I think everyone benefited from that. I know Ryan Jeffers ends up being kind of your everyday catcher for the most part, but he has flourished. Garver ends up getting a World Series ring. So all good in the hood, even though they've traded backstops here.
Declan, how would you say, having now been back in the clubhouse today after the Twins, I'm not saying it's the end of a losing streak. I just like to say the Twins have won 12 of their last 13. It's all how you spin it, Declan. I've learned that in my advanced age of pushing 40. Actually, only pushing 38. I don't know why I age myself even more. Exactly. Thank you, buddy. What's the vibe in the clubhouse currently right now? Can you compare it to a few weeks ago, or was the vibe even a few weeks ago really not all that bad? Guys were expecting to put things together and that it would come around. I guess I'm just genuinely curious because, Declan, I believe when this winning 12 out of 13 started, they were 8 games out of first place, maybe even 8.5, and that's now down to what, 2.5? It got within a game and a half as of, I think, yesterday on this record date. Again, I know they'd like to be in first place, but the reality is we still have a little less than 5 months of the season, and they dug themselves a big hole. And now they're in the mix with everybody else. They have to be feeling pretty good.
Oh, yeah. I think some of the frustrating parts, and look, they were without Royce Lewis. They've been without Royce Lewis since basically the third inning of opening day. They were out without Carlos Correa for a good chunk of this season as well. And now that they're getting those guys back, you're getting Duran back, you're getting Justin Topa back, and you did all that winning basically while those guys were knocking on the door of coming back. I think the mood is a lot better because they knew that they were still a really good team, and eventually some of that stuff starts to go your way. And look, I'm sure there is probably going to be a swing again where the Twins, we saw it a little bit yesterday where they weren't hitting well with runners in scoring position. That's baseball. It's going to happen. I was talking to a Twins player about kind of that today, of how the fact of, they eventually knew that type of success was going to be here. They didn't know if it was going to be 12 straight wins, but they also recognized that the AL Central was always going to be a lot better than what people thought it was. And I'll count myself included. I am surprised how good the AL Central is. I think everyone obviously thought the Twins would kind of cakewalk their way to it like they did last year. You got 4 teams right now that legitimately are over 500, that are playing really good ball, and it's not going to be a cakewalk. It's going to be a dogfight. I know the Guardians, I believe, used that word as kind of a mocking phrase, and then they got mocked for it, rightfully so, last year. But this is like your old, 2006 when it was, Twins, Tigers, White Sox, and it's coming down to basically the last series of the year. I'd much rather have that. I'd much rather experience that throughout the course of the season as number one, as a baseball fan, and probably as a player, and even obviously covering the team. I mean, that's what you want. You don't want to just by default skip your way into the playoffs. You want to fight your way into the playoffs, and I think that part is good. It's the competition, and from what I've talked to from some Twins players, they've honestly liked the fact that the division is a lot tougher.
Well, and overall, Declan, I think it's just good for the game. It's good for baseball when the division has more teams that are in the mix, and it does make it a lot more fun to watch. It makes it more fun to be at the ballpark. Here's one more for you. How's the club feeling about Byron Buxton spending some time on the IL? I know Rocco, I heard him over the weekend. He thought it would be very minimal. They're hoping for just the 10 days. Derek Falvey said 10 to 14. But again, knowing Buck's history, if he's back in less than 14 days, I think that's probably a good sign. But I also think, Declan, this is just probably where we're at in his career. He's going to spend a stint or two on the IL every year. I think you just hope it's not one that takes him out for 60 or 90 days, and maybe you have 2 or 3 10-day stints, and hopefully that's the extent of it.
Yeah, I think with Buck, and look, I have definitely been a little bit more, I think, tougher on him coming into the year, and just and tougher being having just realistic expectations. Like I think we all have to just kind of get out of the fact of, hey, when he is healthy, he's one of the best players in baseball. I don't even know if that's true. I legit don't think that's true. I think he's a really good baseball player, and he's a difference maker for this club when he's in center field and he's being Byron Buxton. And you saw that throughout the first 6 weeks of this season. He's a guy that's a very streaky hitter. He's going to go 2 weeks where he's hitting the cover off the ball. He's going to go 2 weeks where he can't hit at all. But if he's playing elite defense, which he still is, and today I think there was a little bit of a miscommunication on a regular episode that he's only playing, replacement level defense. I think that probably got lost in translation. Every advanced metric still has him as a very plus defender. So he has not necessarily lost a step, and he's not a liability out there. But he's a guy who I do think when he does return, and when this team's at full strength with Correa and Lewis and the lefties, he should be batting 6th or 7th. He probably shouldn't be batting near the top of the order. But when he's on the team and when he's in center field, he is a huge difference maker. Manuel Margot is playing center field tonight. Cross your fingers and knock on wood, because you've sacrificed that for him. And God bless Manuel Margot for trying it and saying he's going to play center, but that's going to be a little bit of a journey. So Buxton needs to come back. They need him back in center field. They need his presence back in the clubhouse to a degree, obviously, and he will still be a very important player. But I do think it's important to have, I think, realistic expectations for him.
So I have an Emmanuel Manny Margot comp, which will lead into my quick hitter for you if you're ready for it. Is there other things we need to cross off before we move along? You know what?
I'll save one. I had one thing. It's not necessarily pressing that I had to share. It was just more of a Johan Duran's entrance, which kind of took, now that that's a thing with it being good. Nice out, it's badass. So I'm hoping to. I've experienced that as a fan. I sat up actually almost as the highest point you can in as I do my math here, right field. I've sat up there as a fan and experienced it. I've been here as a media member experienced. It's one of the best entrances in sports. So I'm hoping to see it obviously this week against Seattle.
Well, and I think they jazzed it up just a tiny bit this year too, didn't they? It's not the exact same as last year, is it? Or is it? It just looked a little different to me on the X machine.
I think the fans are a little bit more into it with the lights and whatnot, and I'm guessing that the Target Field staff probably put a little tweaks to it to make it even more eye popping and whatnot, because it's really cool. It's really cool.
Gotcha. Okay, so here is my comp, and the comp is not a loving one. And again, for Manny, there's still 5 months left of the season. You would think he's probably going to be here for quite some time this season. I can't think of many. I don't even want to call it disappointing, because I don't think anybody expected Margot to be the main part in the lineup, the key cog in the lineup. But I just can't think of many Minnesota Twins that have shown up and have been less impressive than he has. And I'm trying to say that kindly, because obviously he could kick my butt. He's a far better baseball player than I'll ever be, so I don't want to make him super angry. But my comp for Manny Margot's first month with the Minnesota Twins takes me all the way back to the early to mid 2000s. I should have looked up the exact year. Do you remember the Mike Lamb experiment at third base for the Minnesota Twins?
I remember the Mike Lamb experiment. Yeah. Absolutely, I remember the Mike Lamb experiment.
I'm pretty sure Mike Lamb didn't hit a ball out of the infield until May. That's kind of what Margot looks like at this point. It's just everything is a battle for him right now. And then yesterday he was a nightmare defensively, which then scares me more when we're talking about him being in the lineup at center field. So I say all that to say this, Declan. Mike Lamb is one of my least favorite Minnesota Twins of all time.
Okay.
Do you have a least favorite or just least favorite Minnesota Twins that come to mind?
Ooh, I definitely do. You know, I definitely have more guys in the AL Central when I was a younger Twins fan that I just irrationally hate that played for, you know, the White Sox and like Jeremy Bonderman. I have no idea why, but I hated him. I couldn't stand him. Bobby Jenks, the damn goatee. Couldn't stand it. I'm trying to think of a Twins player that, you know, I was fired up about this guy, and this is honestly a little bit of a similar comp. Logan Morrison, like what the hell was that?
Loma.
Even a recent one. What the heck was that experiment? That was just kind of a disaster. He had the boombox thing, and I'm all for. I told Phil and Judd this too. I thought the rally sausage was great because it was something that they could take, dig themselves out of the hole, use as inspiration, and that's awesome because I do think a baseball team needs that over the course of 162. If you're like routinely bringing a boombox and you have been under 500 the entire season, like. Someone just let's stop with the boombox. Let's change it up. Do something else. Bring out a sausage. I don't know. Lomo is one that comes to mind to a degree. I had a love-hate with Jesse Crane, and towards the end, I actually turned into more to love than hate. But the Crane train was prone to come off the tracks at the worst possible time. Jesse Crane, I think, was a little bit. I think a lot of Twins fans probably know exactly what I'm talking about. I think in the totality, Jesse Crane was actually a very good reliever. But you do seem to remember some more of those.
The crane wrecks.
The crane wrecks.
The crane wrecks.
Where the train came off the tracks. I think those are two that probably stick out to me that were definitely up there.
I was also remember there were so many great Twins pitchers on 1-year deals. Remember Sidney Ponzone?
Oh, that greasy hair.
Greasy hair just looked like he just rolled into the ballpark ready to chuck the baseball. Well, that's my quick hitter for you, Declan. I figured you might have a few. I got a laundry list built, so we're going to get to some real fun ones. But
I mean,
Polanco coming back, I didn't want to ask you what your favorite player returning to Target Field was because even though that can be kind of cool, that's also kind of sad.
Yes, it can be.
And you know me, Declan. I'm Mr. Positivity. So we're not going to be sad on this podcast with the soon-to-be American League Central champions.
By the way, I will totally spill some of Ross's vacation days onto this podcast. Are you going to Cooperstown for Joe's induction?
I am going to go. Yeah, it's not officially locked, but it is locked, so I'm going to go. Yeah,
hell yeah, that's going to be awesome, man.
I'm looking forward to it. I think, Declan, more than likely it's going to be I'm not sure we'll actually get into Cooperstown, but we will, but I don't know if we'll actually view the Hall of Fame.
Staying there is impossible.
Correct. But it'll be more just go for the pomp and circumstance. Watch what I'm sure is going to be Joe Mauer's going to turn into like the next Bill Belichick. He's just going to show up. He's going to have everybody chuckling for 20 minutes. Now, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm one of those diehard Joe Mauer defenders, Declan. I've always said this, and I have no problem saying this. If you don't think Joe Mauer is a good baseball player, you're just saying that to get a rise out of people, which obviously works. My blood pressure's going up at this point. You can maybe argue that he's not a Hall of Famer. I would tell you that you're wrong. And not only were you wrong, you're so obviously wrong because he went in on the first ballot. But I have no time for people that think he's not a good baseball player. And funny, Declan, that's only from Minnesota people. The national media has never understood the dislike for Joe Mauer locally.
Correct.
And people love to put it on his contract. But the team could have spent more money if they wanted to. They just chose not to. That's not Joe's fault. So it's one of the best swings you'll ever see. Great baseball player. Again, I don't know how much you can give somebody for being good in the community, but he was never bad in the community, never caused any issues. I'll never understand the Joe Mauer slander. And I am looking forward to it. And realistically, Declan, who's next for the Twins? Who's the next Hall of Famer?
Oh, God.
Is there one? Who is it? I mean, I'm not saying it will happen again, but my point being, if I don't go now to see Joe's induction, it could be a while before I get there.
I mean, if this dynasty indeed starts and he ends up winning multiple World Series, does Carlos Correa go in as a member of the Twins?
Well, that is the interesting part. That's a good one, Declan, because if he stays,
he's a Hall of Famer. Like he's on a Hall of Fame path, I should say.
If he ends up playing the majority of his career with the Twins and wins a World Series with the Twins, it's probably a Minnesota Twins ball cap. So that's a good one. But beyond that, I don't know. I'm one of those weird guys, too. I think Joe Nathan should probably be in the Hall of Fame. He was a victim of being behind Mariano Rivera.
Yeah, you know what? One of my hotter Twins, those playoff losses, that losing streak, the biggest chunk of pie, in my opinion.
They're on him.
One of them, they're on him.
Yeah.
So actually, no, I disagree. I do not think he should be in the Baseball Hall of Fame. I'm more of an on an island in that take than I know with most people. But yeah, I mean, I think maybe Correa. You know, if Royce Lewis ends up being something, maybe. I think that might be it.
The Royce Lewis one and the Byron Buxton thing, those guys both are Hall of Fame talents, but will their bodies allow them to be on the field long enough to make that happen? I think we've learned with Byron Buxton, no.
Probably
I think there's still a chance for Royce Lewis, but again, at this point, the odds would probably tell you no. But yeah, Declan, I'm looking forward to it. I invite all of Twins territory on down to Cooperstown in mid to late July, and let's welcome Hall of Fame Joe rightfully into his place in Cooperstown.
All right, this has been Score North Extra Innings. My name's Declan Goff. That's Ross Brendel. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button on this YouTube channel. We appreciate it. You can expect a little bit more of some Extra Innings content throughout this entire home series. Again, Twins in Seattle for 4 games here at Target Field. Looking forward to it. Appreciate everyone listening and watching and giving us a 5-star review. We'll be back at you another time.